Hello, everyone. We're going to get started momentarily. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Bruce Pandolfini should be on any minute. We're going to be started at 11 o'clock. So, yeah, definitely come on out. You definitely, don't want to miss this. You definitely don't want to miss this, everyone. This is going to be very inspirational. Hello, Bruce.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
Good, good, good. It's so honored to have you here.
Pleased to be here.
Thank you, thank you. How's everything going personally before we begin?
Well, like all of us, we're just trying to get through it. Our difficult,
Likewise,
yeah, but we are
likewise.
surviving.
All right. So yeah, let's do this. I'm really excited. Um, all right. So let me just
Yeah,
click
put my
the.
glasses on. I can see a little bit. Oh yes, that's much.
Okay. So record this computer. All right. Let's go. Hello, everyone. This is Premier Chess CEO Evan Rabin, and I am extremely excited to be here on the 109th edition of the Premier Chess podcast with my dear friend and mentor, Bruce Pandolfini. I have actually met him when I was 8 for the first time, thanks to Shanaz Kennedy, who has been working with Bruce for many many years. And yeah, I was a Churchill School student playing in the Nationals, and I have to say, he signed my Endgame manual book, Future Master. How often does that hold true when you sign that to kids?
Well, I don't always sign that, but I'm very glad it did hold true in this case. You've done wonderfully. I'm very impressed. You're such a professional.
Well, thank you so much, Bruce. I mean, really, I've learned a lot from you both about teaching and playing, the game. You might remember back in 2012, we actually had the honor of teaching a class with Bruce Alberston. May he rest in peace, of course. At the Browning School, and between the two of you, I learned a lot.
Bruce was a great teacher. I learned a lot from Bruce. He was one of a kind. Bruce Alberston, that is.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember his chess mazes, of course. And another idea I actually just was teaching to a student the other day that I learned from Bruce Alberston actually was the idea of like the blueprint checkmate. He said like if you can pick up this queen, put it anywhere on the board, well, how could you checkmate? And to me, at first, I remember as a kid, I was like, "What do you mean? Like pick up the piece, put it anywhere?" But it actually made a lot of sense, after I started, actually doing it. So, um,
He was very, very creative and inventive in all kinds of ways. Uh, I recall his Chessmaster 50. I don't remember the specific stipulations, but he had to try to checkmate with very great limitations on what the pieces could do. And he had various resources he would come up with. He was an amazing teacher.
so
And he
what?
was also instrumental in the beginning of chess in the schools.
Hmm.
He was the chief organizer at that point. Uh, I mean, I was the so-called head of it, but Bruce did so much work. He was fantastic.
Got it. So tell me, before we get into other things, now that we're, talking about Bruce Alberston a little bit, could you tell me, a little bit more about, I mean, I knew him and you obviously as adults, teaching together, but could you tell us a little bit more about your friendship with him and how you, worked together since
Well,
he
we
was
were
such a
very
great
good
guy?
friends. And it goes back to the early 80s when I was the manager director of the Manhattan Chess Club, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. That was a great club. And Bruce came into the club, and I think the very first day we didn't hit it off, but thereafter we became fast friends. We worked on any number of teaching projects, and he was a very special professional. And we maintained that really good relationship right through to the end of uh, his life. Um, Bruce had many interests. He was an old movie fan, because I had an interest in old movies too, and so we were always talking about that. In fact, I think he had put together a book he never published, which listed the accomplishments and achievements of everyone practically involved in motion pictures. It was an extraordinary document. I don't know what happened to it, but Bruce would compiled that. It was really amazing. He was a great compiler. Uh, he loved creating chess positions, tactical chess positions,
And of
and
course, he and I believe Fred Wilson wrote the book together, right? Of the top,
well,
like
they
20
wrote a
moves.
few books together. You know,
Yeah.
they worked beautifully as a team. And Bruce helped me on my books on any number of occasions. I mean, he was fantastic. There was only one Bruce Alberston.
Well, may he rest in peace. And I know, actually one of our other podcast guests, Bruce Davis, has actually been running a memorial tournament for him now the last couple of years. So yeah, thank you. So Bruce, the first thing I wanted to cover out of curiosity, of course, I knew your history pretty well. Just knowing you as a kid and of course an adult and a colleague. But one thing I was kind of curious about after looking at your Wikipedia page for a second was so you lost to Larry Evans in your final rated game in Las Vegas in 1970. Can you tell us a little bit about that and like why was that the end of your tournament career?
Well, I think there are probably some errors on the Wikipedia page. First of all, I didn't lose to Larry Evans.
Oh, excuse me.
I drew with Larry Evans, but he was a half point ahead of me. Um, and this was in the National Open in, I think, 1970. My aging brain can't retain all of that, but yeah, it was a Sicilian, and I played what I thought was a very nice move and built a strong attack. I think we had to play 50 moves in 2 hours, and it came down to a point where I had 4 different winning ideas, and we both had to make 20 moves in a minute.
Wow.
And as I was about to play the the nicest of the 4 possibilities, winning pretty quickly, Evans offered me a draw, even though it was my move. I was thinking, and this startled me. I said no, and I forgot what I was going to play. And I have to play the worst of the 4 possibilities. It led to a perpetual. Evans offered me a draw, and I accepted it. I think I had to share a prize with a few others. I got $50 and lost all of that money on the gambling tables in 5 minutes.
What game, Bruce?
Oh, maybe it was blackjack and a few other things. I did terribly, and I said, "Hey, I'm not sure I should be doing this anymore." And that was one reason I stopped playing serious chess. I went on to other hopeful areas, other disciplines. I never thought of being a chess teacher at that point. In fact, I went from there to the Strand bookstore,
Oh wow.
where I was working behind the counter, and that's how I got involved in teaching chess from there.
Wow, teaching at the Strand. I know they have a huge chess selection today, of course. Did they back then as well?
Well, they had a big chess selection, but I wasn't teaching at the Strand. One day, someone came to the counter and put, about 10 chess books on the counter to be purchased. And I was behind the register.
Mm.
And we got into a conversation, and we said goodbye. And 5 or 6 days later, he called me and asked if I would like to be an analyst for PBS covering the World Championship match,
Wow.
assistant Shelby Lyman, because he didn't have a lot of people, and he liked what I had to say behind the counter. And that's how I got involved in chess teaching in 1972. Total accident. He was the chief producer at 13.
Well, I think a lot of people certainly have that, type of experience, Bruce. People, go back into it. I know in my personal experience, I, worked for Chess in the Schools, which, by the way, I know you were instrumental in founding. So I want to talk about that in just a minute. But then, but that was my backup. Like, quite frankly, right? I graduated from Brandeis. I was looking at sales and marketing jobs, and of course, I had very good, chess connections. I've known, Ron and Sean Smith for, a long time. Even, at that point, I did, and it was kind of my backup. So, could you tell us a little bit about, finding chess in the schools and how that whole thing came about?
Well, it has to start with Fan Adams. He was a member of the Manhattan Chess Club, and I was the director of the Manhattan Chess Club. And he came to me one day, and he was talking about improving tournament play throughout the city, especially in the club. And he didn't think it was very good. In the context of that conversation, I said, I think you could get more mileage if
Huh.
you created school programs. And we began talking about that, and it took off from there. He was the head of Mobil Oil South
Huh.
at the time, and I think the first thing he did for the clubs, he wrote a check, a nice little check right there at the table, and said, "Will this help?"
So he put his money where his mouth is. I mean, that's
Yeah.
incredibly important.
So I designed the programs, and Fan sold a lot of it. The one thing I had to do was convince critical thinking experts in the Board of Education that chess had value. That wasn't so easy.
Hmm.
They weren't so gung ho about that, and but it worked. It took some time, even though it was totally funded, and the Board of Ed would have to put no money into it. They were initially against it.
Wow.
Then,
And
of course,
what were
later
their
on,
what were their biggest rejections to it?
well, they agreed with the point of view, if I recall, that those who do and study chess will improve in school in general. But their argument was interesting. They said, isn't it true that receiving special attention in any area whatsoever will help you do better in school?
Hmm.
It's a hard argument to refute. I countered by saying, yes, that may be true, but I think chess will do even more for
Wow.
you. And I went through the various reasons why. In one situation, I had to speak to a room of about 100 teachers and experts, trying to convince them. And I showed them how we could present chess examples that would have carryover value. And that was very helpful.
Hmm.
After that, they were kind of convinced. They were able to question me and disagree and express themselves. And I tried to counter very carefully everything they put out there. And they wound up accepting us.
Hmm. And now, just in the schools, of course, 30 years later, is doing, absolute tremendous work. I was actually just listening to Sean Smith talk the other day in a video from a town hall he actually did with Russ McCoskey of ICN. And,
Mm-hmm.
he was just talking about, the updates of, what's going on now, virtually. But did you have any idea, like, chess in the schools would be so, successful, so many years later? And, are you still involved with them at all today?
No, I am not. Of course, I worked as the executive director for the first 2 years. By the way, I didn't take anything for that. I didn't take a salary, anything for that, because I
Of
felt it
course.
was really great for the chess community. So I think the most I ever made was about $3,000 or $4,000 from chess in the schools over the course of a year. And then I just simply had other things to do. Alan Kaufman ran the program, and then various
Marlon
other.
Kaplan.
Yeah, Marley did a wonderful job, really built it up. So I haven't been involved. I've been supportive emotionally and spiritually. Very happy to see the success of the program, which has been great. And it's introduced so many young people to the game of chess, and they've derived so much value from it. So I did envision that this could happen, but you never know.
Absolutely. So, Bruce, you've seen, many kids from, public schools, with CIS, of course, some of the elite schools, like Browning, and I know now you run a program at Berkeley Carroll, some other schools as well. What do you see as the biggest value, in chess for a kid?
Well, I'm not sure there's any one value. I mean, there's so many things are helpful about chess, and good chess players are different. You have very different styles. Just to think about the great Karpov-Kasparov confrontations, two radically different geniuses coming from different approaches. So you get a range of different talents coming out in chess. But one thing that's true for all of them, I think they all love chess.
Hmm.
When you see that in a kid, that's very important. They have to have a passion for doing it. What kind of things do chess players do? You might look at that. Chess players solve problems. They
Sure.
solve, and they rely on different techniques and approaches to do that. And so if you get practice at solving problems and being creative at it, obviously it's going to impact other areas of your life.
And you, of course, wrote one of the first books about business and chess,
Yeah,
illustrating that,
yeah.
which is critical. I know, my good friend Jim Egerton, actually wrote a book called Business on the Board, which was, certainly inspired by you a little bit. So, um, you were certainly one of the first few to really recognize that.
Certainly, I mean that's true, but also chess in life. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, carryover value to things you do on an ordinary basis every day. Um, Learning to look ahead, trying to find the best options, narrowing it down. One problem many people have is they'll try to look at everything.
Hmm.
And of course, you get nowhere when you do that. That's like looking at nothing. What you have to do, seriously, what you have to do is learn how to focus on just a few things,
Sure.
the most relevant, pertinent things, and devote your entire energy to analyzing those possibilities. And that's what good players do. They kind of winnow everything down to just a few options, and it becomes so much easier. It's still hard. Chess is a
Sure.
hard game, but it becomes a lot easier if you're only considering a few future possibilities.
Yeah, you raised an extremely important point. The process of elimination is key. That's why I'm sure you've taught the tree method, from Alexander Kotov, before, something that
I think
teaches
we all
students
have
all
to.
the time. But that's also true in business, of course. When I first started working at Oracle in sales, the first thing we had to do was find the low-hanging fruit. Reach out to our current customers first, then, reach out to, customers who attended our events, right? And then only then would you go for, sort of the greenfield, that was out there. So it's definitely important to, prioritize and, treat things, almost like a standardized test. You start with your, many options, your four options, your, less, et cetera. So, um, the next thing I wanted to, quickly ask you about, was just, you've taught me a little bit, when we were teaching together, um, and, I'm sure there's many insights we could be, talking all day about this, but what are some just generic, couple different tips that you have for chess teachers, starting out, and then maybe a little bit more experienced ones. What are your few tips?
Well, that's a tough one. Chess players are different. Chess teachers are different. In my own case, when I started teaching in '72, I was not an experienced teacher. I'm not sure I was even a very good teacher, but I cared about my students and I tried to learn a lot about them. Um, I think that's the most important thing is to, well, I can't say there's a most important thing. I try to instill a sense of confidence in my students right away and a sense of identification. If you ever watch good teachers in a classroom situation, I'm not talking about chess teachers now, but
Sure.
good teachers, and you wonder how do they get control of the class so easily? I'm terrible at it, by the way. But I have to marvel. What do they do that is so useful and helpful? Well, if you watch them, you'll see them doing something very quickly and soon and often, and that is this: they will learn the names of the students quite quickly and use those names a lot,
Mm,
and that establishes that rapport so that the student feels he or she is really being spoken to as an individual rather than being part of a group mass. And good teachers will do that. They learn who the people are in the class very quickly. And so that impressed me when I began to realize that. And so I've always tried to do that and learn certain things about them. I try to recall birthdays, for example,
hmm.
of my students. And I still recall birthdays from some students going back to the early 70s.
Wow.
Not all, but some.
So Bruce,
Uh,
pop quiz. When's my birthday?
I don't know. Ready? I feel first question you pose to me. When is your birthday?
July 5th. July 5th.
Like that. One day after. Okay.
I had to throw a little humor here. Well,
Said I wasn't a very good teacher.
absolutely. Well, look, classroom management, is key. As Andrew Konensberg says, it's just respect. And the kids feel seen, they feel recognized. Which is critical. Um, and by the way, I look forward to actually a podcast episode that we're going to have next week. Just a quick preview with Elizabeth Spiegel from IS318, who's
Oh,
probably
she
one of the best classroom managers around.
absolutely. She's
Um,
up there at the top.
so we're going to get a lot of insights, with that. Actually, that's 2 weeks from now, actually, but still, very much look forward to that. So yeah, so Bruce, again, you've been around the block for a while. Um,
A long
moving
while.
on from teaching, I want to talk about school programs.
Okay.
So together with Shernaz and others, have started many of the most successful programs around. Um, I've definitely, challenged. So we've been running this company now for 4 years. We partnered with over 80 schools.
Wow.
But
Great.
at the same time, frankly, I'm working on building some of those up to some of the bigger programs. That's competing in the nationals. Year after year after year. So what tips do you have for school programs? Not just launching, of course, but really kicking off and building a chess culture, going to the nationals, etc.
Not an easy question to answer either. Either. Um, well, I think one thing a teacher wants to show his or her enthusiasm and love for the game too. If you display that passion, that spirit, it's infectious and and gets people involved pretty quickly. So you want to show why you love the game so much to everyone you speak to, practically, and you want to convey that in the first session or two to those students when they're starting a class with you. Um, as far as how to sell a class to a school, you just got to meet with people and talk about how wonderful the game is. I think the game sells itself very largely. It's
But
easy to
I'm
talk.
just to clarify, Bruce. I'm not talking too much about starting a program. That's
Okay.
relatively easy. We talk to the principal, we talk to a parent. We get it started. But I'm talking about we've been running a program in a school now for, let's say, a year. It doesn't matter if it's curriculum classes or after school or some type of elective during the day or both. But how could we get it from just one activity that the school is doing that some people know about? Because I'll give you an example, right? I've
Ah,
actually met teachers at schools where I know they have chess programs, right? As a chess, whether it's ours or someone else, I'd meet a teacher, and I knew about the school's chess program, but they didn't, right? Which kind of shows that, yes, chess is in the school, but it's not part of the culture. I know, for instance, at Browning, one of the programs you develop, every single person knows about chess at Browning, right? It's just it's built into the culture. Of course, John Kennedy is running it now. I know that, right? Everyone who goes into Browning, right, knows about chess, right? Some of the schools, like for instance, I'll give one of our school programs as an example. Grace Church School. Fred Wilson, by the way, runs the program in the elementary school. We do in the middle and the high school, right? But I know for a fact, I've walked into the school, there are some teachers that know about it, and then there are others who are like, you know, oh, are you like a visitor? I'm like, no, we've been running a chess program at the school for 2 years now, right? But people don't know that necessarily. So how do you, actually, kind of take it to the from like just one little thing to, a big part of the culture?
Well, you try to reach out to parents and let them know what's going on. You may start with a good regimen or a good curriculum
Sure.
that you follow, and the parents can follow at home and see what's going on. Um, when presenting a class, it should be very clear, stating what you're going to do ahead of time, summarizing at the end what you've done,
Sure.
having follow up, and interacting with the kids and the parents, and then also, of course, other administrators or administrators in the school that may be helpful, who would be positive and supportive of your program. It may not be so easy to find right away, but there's always one or two who will get more involved, and you connect to them, and you try to sell it within the school that way. I don't know. I don't want to use the word sell. I don't want to make it a commercial thing. I think the game just, though, if I'm going to use that word again, sells itself in all these cases. Once people see the kids getting so involved, so happy doing it, and with the carryover to them doing better in school itself, that's a very attractive thing.
Mm. No, absolutely. Definitely sells itself, and you just gotta, reach out to more people. Expand your audience. That's always important. Um, so obviously, what people know you for the most, is being and searching for Bobby Fischer, of course. And actually, by the way, even just over the last few days, I told a couple people that I was going to record this episode, and if they don't know like the name Bruce Pandolfini, I'm like, hey, you remember that teacher in Searching for Bobby Fischer? And they're like, oh yeah, of course. So before we get into like the movie itself, like beyond what we know from the movie, right? Like, how did you meet Joshua Waitskin? What could you talk a little bit more about, teaching him before we get into the movie itself?
Sure. First of all, I want to say that the movie, which is a really fine movie, great script by Steve Zalian, who did win the Oscar that year for Schindler's List. By the way, his screenplay. He wrote the screenplay for that too. Really brilliant guy. But let's start with Fred's book. That is a one of a kind book. That's a precious, ingenious book. It really captures what it's like to be a parent of a talented child. How did I meet or get involved in all of that? I think I'm trying to recall, but I think I was walking through Washington Square Park in New York.
Huh.
I saw this kid sitting at a table playing chess. I think he was there with his mom, but Fred may have been there too. And it was clear had remarkable talent, and that was Josh. As Fred always says, I gave him my number, and he called me, and I never called back. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but. And then I started giving Josh lessons, and Josh is Josh. He really just shined from the beginning. I became close to the family, and Fred started writing this wonderful book,
Wow.
which is maybe the best book about chess ever written.
Wow.
I mean, it would not be unreasonable to say that.
Wow. And then, of course, Josh went on to write, The Art of Learning, probably one of the most, education books of all time, right? So,
Another fantastic book. When Josh has so many talents, which took him elsewhere. He could have obviously gone further in the world of chess. He became an international master. He undoubtedly would have, but he had other interests.
Jiu-jitsu, of course.
Yeah, the martial arts, where he became world champion, I think 2 years in a row.
Wow.
And he's done other things.
Yeah,
Which I'm
and by the way,
probably
I've been
yeah.
meaning to for many, many years actually, but last year I actually read the book, The Art of Learning, and it was, you know, incredible
Very
actually,
good
just
book.
about transferable skills and studying and work ethic, and it was awesome.
If I recall properly, the reason that Paramount wound up purchasing the book to make it into a movie, they they were looking at about 100 book covers to see which might be interesting to write a screenplay about.
Hmm.
And they saw the picture of Josh on the cover playing chess of
Hmm.
Fred's book, and that kind of sold them right away.
Hmm.
Said, "Wow, look at this picture!" And I think Steve read the book and loved it and developed a screenplay around
So
it.
what was it like, during the process of the film, in terms of, being portrayed by advising the film, etc.
Well, yeah, I had to work with the actors and create the chess positions. Um, what you want to do with an actor is make him or her feel comfortable. You don't want them to feel so distracted by trying to make the chess moves correct that they don't act well. So,
Hmm.
how do you make them feel comfortable? And I found all kinds of ways to present the moves that were with mnemonics and visual cues that they could remember easily. Um, it was great fun, hard work. Um, and of course, the chess positions themselves, in the beginning, we had to create all the positions. They were modified throughout,
Hmm.
to deal with the cinematic changes that took place or
Of
had to
course.
take place. Um, Sometimes liberties are taken, for visual effect, but you don't want to detract from the overall narrative, the storyline, which is prominent and most important. After all, the chief art form is film, not chess. Chess is the leitmotif of it all.
Hmm.
But you're trying to create an entertaining presentation that people want to watch.
Hmm.
So therefore, you might take certain liberties. You won't move at the pace of a real chess player because who's going to watch that? Waiting for 15 minutes for a move to be played. You
Right.
have to speed it up. There's no choice. But you find ways to do that to imply that longer time has taken place, and you try to get around it. A creative director will be able to do that. And in both cases, well, I've worked in a few projects like this, but you'll find that that's what they do. They find ways to show the game, which
Hmm.
doesn't really take a lot of time.
Well, I think part of, what's important to talk about too is, I actually Danilo Quellar, one of our instructors, just wrote a little article about uh, chess documentaries and films. And there were actually, a lot of good ones, Queen of Katwe, of
Oh,
course,
sure.
and um, several other ones. But definitely, and we'll obviously talk about Queen's Gambit shortly. But none of them are nearly as famous, I would say, as Searching for Bobby Fischer, right? If I ask just 9 out of 10 people if they heard Queen of Conway, probably not, even though it was a Disney film and it was out there. What about Searching for Bobby Fischer do you think really just like kicked off, to both chess and more importantly, non-chess players?
Well, I think you had a great cast. I mean, many of those people stand out now. And of course, Max Pomerantz was really wonderful playing Josh.
And I guess he was casted at Hunter, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was a chess player. I mean, he knew how to move the pieces, and he was a decent player. But he did so much. We used to joke he did so much fake chess during the film. He finished sixth in the nationals that year.
Wow,
All
that I
that
didn't know.
practice fake chess actually improved his chess.
Wow.
But he was a very smart kid. So
Wow. Wow. Um, yeah, no, and of course, for those of you that don't know, Bruce Pandolfini was played by Ben Kingsley. Actually, Asa Hoffman was portrayed as can you remind me his name? The guy that
Austin
Ace
Austin Pendleton, who
Austin
was in,
Pendleton.
I think, the original Fiddler on the Roof.
Right, right. And he was, of course, somewhat of a side character in the film, but there was obviously great acting. It was definitely a great production. So, um, before I get into Queen's Gambit, because that's actually why I thought this episode obviously was so timely, since literally everyone is talking about it. Wanted to talk about your authorship career. You've written many books. I think about like 37 books, something like that. Something up there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I don't know myself. It's something in the 30s.
something in the 30s. So um, just tell us, what inspired your, author career. What your favorite book might be, or book or two. Tell us about being a chess author.
Okay, well, that just happened over time. Based on my chess teaching, I got into writing books. I had opportunities. Um, Starting in the early 70s, I knew Charles Scribner Jr., the publisher, and he wanted me to write books. But at that time, I had a company. I was working with myself, of course, George Kane, who was a fantastic chess teacher, one of the best ever, and Frank Thornley was also a fantastic teacher, and others. And we was working together and sharing things. And instead of selling myself initially to Mr. Scribner, I sold George, and he produced two really nice books.
Huh.
And the titles of which I don't remember, of course, but they were great books. You could look up under George Kane.
Sure.
Anyhow, I you were asking me how I got involved in writing and all that. I always wanted to be a writer. I think I wanted to be a poet really, and I had a small collection of 40 or 50 poems, which I wound up realizing weren't very good, but I took them very seriously, and that's what I was doing while I was at the Strand bookstore, endeavoring to be a writer.
I have to say, by the way, that is definitely, at least I think, relatively unknown fact about Bruce. Being a poet. I never knew that. So,
Well, it was a very good one then. And I eventually gave it up, but I was really trying to take it very seriously. Um, and I think in the early 80s, I got involved with Simon and Schuster. They reached out to me. I wound up selling a package of chess books, 9 chess books, to replace the Reinfeld, Horowitz, Chernow books, which are irreplaceable, by the way.
huh.
My books aren't equal to those great books, the better ones they did. But that's the contract. I sold 9 books, and very few people have ever, from the publishing business, have know of someone who sold 9 books.
Wow.
I'm not an agent. I'm not an agent. It took a while, and anyhow, that's how the Fireside Chess Library was started.
Which I believe the Endgame manual that you signed is part of, correct?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But I've also written, of course, later on for Random House and Hyperion, it's the business book, and others, Russell Enterprises. I've enjoyed it all. It's usually hard.
Russell, of course, is a great guy as well, from of
Right.
Russell Enterprises.
Now, I am not a natural writer. I won't pretend to be a natural good writer. I work very hard at what I do. I guess over time, I've learned enough so I can do it more quickly. My mother helped me. She was an editor for both Simon & Schuster and Random House, by the way. And she would edit my pieces and advise me. And I learned a lot from her. We haven't gotten into the Queen's Gambit yet, but Walter Tevis was a teacher, and he advised me on my writing. So through the years,
I had no idea you knew him back then. Yeah.
Famous writer. I've had various people, gifted people, advise me, and so it's helped me. For a non-talented writer, I've done okay.
I beg to differ, Bruce. Bruce, if one thing I've known about Bruce for many years too, working with him, he's incredibly modest. I remember I actually, by the way, asked him in person. He probably doesn't remember this, but like in 2012, after we were teaching one day, I was like, Bruce, like, what's your favorite book? He was like, I don't know. None of them are that great, I was like, well, like, you're definitely probably the most high-selling chess author there is. Really cool.
I never recommend my own books, Evan, for a variety of reasons. But there are so many great chess books. As you know, it's always been said that there are more books written about chess than all of the games combined. I'm not sure that's still true, but it was certainly true in the old days. I mean, there are so many books out there of every type now. But there are chess books that I just love. I mean, one book I love is Fred Reinfeld's The Human Side of Chess. I think that's just a wonderful book. It really excites you about chess personalities. You know, he even made Vidmar seem exciting. You know,
Wow.
so.
Wow. One thing, by the way, that a quote of yours that I learned through Shanaz Kennedy that's actually printed on all of her shirts, as you probably know, is "Be brilliant." It's a simple but amazing quote. How did that come about?
Well, you know, at the nationals and other major events, you go around in the last round, and you'll say something to all your students in their ear. You know, people wonder, what do you say in their ear? That's what I say. Be brilliant.
Wow, it's good. It's definitely catchy. It moves on, and you know, we got to always take it to the next level, of course. So speaking of writing, I know Shelby Lorman of American Chess Equipment recently put us in touch. Not that he needed to, because I've known him forever, but you know, another connection is always good. I think you're actually working on a new book now, a little bit with someone else. Can you talk a little bit about that?
A new book I'm working on. I'm always working on new
Well,
books.
you're always working on new stuff, but what one in particular that you were, you know, interested in talking about? I think.
Okay. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. First of all, I have diaries going back to 1972. I have extensive diaries. I guess to some extent, I viewed myself as a kind of therapist. And after every session, I would write a summary of the session with a student
Hmm.
and comments. And I have extraordinary things going back to 1972.
Wow.
It's just a huge catalog of information on every good player I've worked with and every player that didn't go anywhere as well.
Hmm.
I've always
I'm
tried
one of
to.
those. No.
Yeah, so I have all of those notes. I've been trying to think of some kind of teaching diary, instructional diary based on my experiences that might help other teachers build their own careers and be better teachers. Not that there's a lot to learn from me, but I've simply done so much. Some of it must be of utility. A lot of it was waste and mistakes. I made a ton of mistakes, but that's even helpful because you make mistakes, you wind up correcting things and bettering it over time. And often I'd be saying something a particular way again and again, thinking I was right on. And a student would ask a simple question, and I would realize, wow, I've been totally confusing all this time and never realized it. And that simple question, possibly from a novice, made me rethink things.
Wow.
And so I have a lot of those kinds of insights and observations that I've diarized, and hopefully will put together into some kind of useful little book. We'll see. Writing is not easy. It's not easy for me, certainly.
Well, I think it's important to realize too that, like you just sort of alluded to, we could certainly learn from our students as well. You know, it's definitely a two-way street a lot of the time.
Evan, that's one thing, by the way. I think more teachers, I should have said this maybe earlier when you were asking questions like it, should keep diaries and summaries of what they do with their students. It has usefulness to them. It has great usefulness to the students. You can track what you've been doing because sometimes you get repetitive and you see certain mistakes coming out that can only be realized by looking at what you've been doing, by going over it. Now, I have never wanted to stay with a student forever. I'm not a guru. Because, wow, everything that of value that I've had to say, I've already imparted or tried to. So I think it's in life, you have many teachers, some good, some bad, but you learn from all of them. But I like my students to move on and experience new ideas, new approaches, new ways of doing things. So I never stay with a student forever. And when I see a student starting to reach a certain level, I try to help them connect to a teacher that can take them further.
And by the
Uh,
way, speaking of which, we would definitely be reminiscing if I didn't, mention that, some of Bruce's students, just for those of you that don't know, of course, there's Joshua Waitskin, who became an IM. There's Fabiano Caruana, who became a world championship candidate, who's currently ranked, I believe, second or third in the world. Not sure up to date, but certainly in the top five or higher. And you also had Robert Hess, who obviously became a strong grandmaster, who later learned with Miran Sher, rest in peace. Of course, he unfortunately passed away just a few months ago.
yeah, great trainer. One of the maybe the best of the planet. Who knows? He was really very very good. And
Oh.
by the way, Miran was Robert's only personal trainer. I was his personal trainer, but he was in my classes, and I would sit with Robert and analyze things like the two knights defense. And Robert was very tough, by the way,
Huh.
and so that was admirable right away. You see, this kid's a fighter; he's going to go far. But it was Miran who trained him privately, and
And by the way, true little fun anecdote about Robert, which was in your and Shanaz's tournaments at Browning. So I'm, I think, 1 year older than Robert. We both were playing in, Swiss B a couple different times, and then all of a sudden, like 1 week, he was like, "Oh, I'm playing in Swiss A today." I was like, "Oh," and then like, sure enough, like 2 months later, he was playing like adult tournaments, and I mean everything led from there.
he's a really fine guy. He was really hard and tough when he was younger, though. And uh, then he wasn't pleasant to work with. Now he's wonderful. So, but I guess I've also helped here and there. Different people became very, very good. Even if I only gave them a few lessons. For example, I gave Max DeLugi when he was young an endgame course, private endgame course. Yeah, and I gave Joel Benjamin some of his early lessons. In fact, I found Joel with Bill Goichberg. Pointed him out to me. He knew that I was looking for talents. He said, "This kid is really remarkable." Goichberg deserves a lot of credit for developing chess in this country, by the way.
I mean, look, I know a lot of people over the years have complained a little bit almost of him, running Monopoly over the tournaments, this and that. But I mean, come on, he's the organizer that's been around forever. I know before my time, honestly, but I know he used to run a lot of tournaments in New York, smaller events,
Oh yeah,
at the Chess Center of New York. So that many of which obviously Steve Emmett took over.
right.
But I mean, what Goichberg has done for chess is, I mean, just instrumental. And of course, by the way, you would think maybe someone of that generation would not be adapting, but he of course was the first to adapt. To of course with some help of Danny Rode and others, but
Yeah.
he was the first to adapt to online tournaments.
Yeah, Sophia's done so much in the tournament scene. Sophia Rode. So
Yeah, we should definitely be.
I mean, there have been many who've contributed and helped to build chess in America. I wouldn't leave out Sunil Mantri. I mean, he's been incredible, right? So,
Absolutely. And by the way, I've been
your
bugging.
sound is faded. I don't hear you.
You hear me now?
Can you hear me? I don't hear you.
Hello?
Maybe it was something I said.
Do you hear me now, Bruce? Is this better?
Oh, your sound is gone. Let's see.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Hello?
can you hear me now?
Yes, Bruce?
Hmm.
Shoot.
Should we go back off and come back on?
No, hold on. Is that better, Bruce? No. Is that better, Bruce?
You there, Evan?
Yes. Hold on. 1 second. Do you hear me now, Bruce?
Should I go off and come back on?
1 second.
Okay.
How's this? How's this?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. I will edit it a little bit to take away a minute. Okay, so yes, absolutely. Goichberg and many other people have been absolutely tremendous, of course, to growing chess in America. So yeah, the last thing I really wanted to, of course, get into um, is Queen's Gambit.
Hmm.
Literally millions of people around the world are looking at chess. I've been getting so many inquiries over the last like several days, probably about 2 weeks now, about chess. Just from non-chess friends that said, "Hey, we want to get into it a little bit." It's absolutely incredible film. For those of our listeners who might not know, Bruce has actually been, along with, of course, Grandmaster Gary Kasparov, former world champion, advisors on the film. And I actually just learned right on this episode that he was actually friends with the author of the book. But could you tell us how you got involved and what the experience has been like?
Well, for me, it goes back, as I said in my Chess Life article, which has just appeared, 38 years. I was a consultant for Random House, and I got to see a manuscript, which was written by Walter Tevis, uh, essentially a completed manuscript. In the summer of 82, and I read it, and I came into Random House headquarters, and Walter was there with his editor in chief, Anne Friedgood. That was his personal editor, and she was a very fine editor. And I told them what I thought of the book. I thought it was really a brilliant book, a great idea, loved it. But there was some problems with the chess moves. Some of them had to be changed or corrected. And his editor wanted to know more what I meant, and I explained. But Walter didn't like that idea. First of all, he was about a 1,500 player himself, or something like that. He played in tournaments, and he felt he knew enough chess. He didn't need my help. And also, he was afraid I would butcher the narrative in some way and destroy the literary quality of the work, which is understandable. And so that went nowhere. And as I was leaving, I was saying goodbye in the office in a friendly way. I simply threw out what I thought the title of the manuscript should be. And his editor then stopped me and said, "Wait a second, I think we should talk a little longer." And after about a half hour, I was hired to be the chess consultant on what now was called the Queen's Gambit.
Hmm.
And so that's where the title comes. It was really my title back in 82.
Oh wow.
I met with Walter about, I don't know, maybe 10 times in his home in Manhattan, his brownstone.
So it was actually already geared to be like a film back in 1982.
Film. It was a novel. It was a novel. But Walter Tevis was a well-known screenwriter. He had done The Hustler with Paul Newman,
Mm-hmm.
The Man Who Fell to Earth. So he was not only a major novelist, he was a major screenwriter.
Hmm.
In fact, one time I was there in his home, and he got a call from Paul Newman, the actor. And afterwards, he told me a little aside. He said, we're thinking of doing The Color of Money, which is a book that Walter was also writing at the same time, which is the follow-up to The Hustler. And he said, "Well, we got Newman again, but they're thinking of bringing in this new kid. Have you ever heard of this guy, Tom Cruise?" So it was a very funny moment because he was a star, Tom Cruise. Risky Business had just come out or was about to. There was a lot of attention to it. So anyhow, so I met with him in his home, as I said, about 10 times. I corrected chess, if I can put it that way, or made suggestions. Walter took it all down. He said he was going to amend the book in those ways. And we became very friendly. He helped me with my own writing. We exchanged letters thereafter. And he said he was going to take chess lessons even. But of course, he wound up passing away. And the book came out in 1983, the novel, The Queen's Gambit.
Right.
And I read it again after it came out. And sure enough, Walter gave me a very nice credit in his acknowledgments, but he made only the most trivial changes, and the major things were left in, all the mistakes. So the only thing that I really did for the novel was to give it its final title.
Wow.
But after that, I mean, Walter's wife, Eleonora, had discussions with people, and there was great interest from the film world to do something on it. Eventually, it was sold to Alan Scott, a producer, a writer, and in 1991, I think, and he got some really big time people involved, but it wound up going nowhere.
Yeah,
And then
that's 19 years. With pretty much nothing happening.
after that, well, in 2018, I finally heard back on it all. 2018, that's already 36 years after. And I got a call from Bill Horberg, who's the producer of The Queen's Gambit. He was also one of the producers of Searching for Bobby Fischer. And he and I are the only connected with both films.
Well, he was actually mentioned in your Chess Life article, of course.
Yes. Yeah, he's a really smart guy, Bill. And he said, we're going to do this. And so I met with him, and of course, Scott Frank, who's really very gifted guy. He's a screenwriter, the director, very, very insightful, very accomplished. And Bill, Scott, myself, and Alan Scott, Scott Frank and Alan Scott. And we met, and it was clear I was going to be hired, to do the chess in this.
Wow.
There, we set up a meeting also with Garry Kasparov. They wanted Kasparov to play Borgov. He wound up not playing Borgov. Borgov is the big Russian,
of course,
in the film. But
many people, by the way, have said he is somewhat made out to be like Spassky. Is that correct? Or what are your thoughts about that?
Spassky, maybe Kasparov himself a little bit, maybe Paul Karras a little bit. I'm also basing this on my experience with Walter Tevis and what he said to me. Sure. People often is the character of Beth Harmon, who's played ingeniously by Anya Taylor-Joy. Is she based on anyone? I don't think she's based on anyone in particular. I mean, I've heard different suggestions. Walter was a tournament chess player, and he did. In fact, he lost to Mary Lasher, as John Donaldson told me recently, in 11 moves.
Huh.
And she was an accomplished chess player. She translated Averbach's Pawn Endings. And by the way, we all lived together in a huge chess complex, in my chess complex in the Bronx. There were 15 of us, and Mary was one. John Grief was living with her. John Grief and Mary were boyfriend girlfriend, and she translated Averbach we would joke, on the floor of my apartment, because there were no.
It's like a chess frat house.
A lot of well-known chess players stayed there or lived there.
Wow. Any examples that are still very active today?
Living there? No, the apartment was done many years ago. It's all over.
No, but I'm saying people who live there that are very active in the chess community today.
Stayed there for a while, and any traveling grandmaster or chess elite might stay there for a night.
Wow.
It was open to everyone.
That's awesome. I wish there could be something like that today.
Something, yes. Well, I think there was a comparable one in Berkeley.
I did hear about that, actually. I think it was Josh Friedel. Actually, my good friend Sam Schenklin from Brandeis, went there fairly often, actually.
Yeah, so both coasts had places to go to, and mine was in the South Bronx.
Wow, amazing. So what about the film, don't we know, Bruce? From just looking at it, is there one or two just behind the scenes kind of things that you could tell us?
Many things have been said already. Much of it quite correct, but there's some things that are not quite right. Initially, just to give a summary, and I've stated this elsewhere, I created what's called the Bible, 92 positions that reflect the situations that need chess in the cities. But that was soon expanded to 350.
Wow.
Most of those are not seen at all. Some of them, we had a German tech crew, brilliant guys, by the way, who were very valuable and were on the scene all the time. Ipe Rubing, who passed away during the summer, unfortunately, was great. And John Paul Atkinson. And they did so many things that were helpful. They were there, and they deserved full credit along with myself and Gary. No question about it. So many people. When you have a film, it's a strange art form. You have all these people giving their best, even in little ways, to make for an overall art in the end. And often you don't get the credit that you deserve. Um, but I certainly appreciated what they did.
Yeah, and it's look, and I said this in my blog post that I wrote the other day myself. All PR is good PR, right? And this just absolutely. I mean, look, there's been many other chess films out there. There's been many articles out there. Nothing has, I would say, been any bit close, to the PR that Queen's Gambit has produced for
No,
chess.
it's really remarkable, Evan. Within hours of the series being released on the 23rd of October, there were analyses on the internet of practically every position that could be seen. It was really incredible how they had figured out everything. They were pretty much. There were a few things we wish we had done differently. What happens is, of course, there are a few little things that get by. You have many takes done on a scene, and it's filmed correctly, and then suddenly there's a take that looks better, but it's
Hmm.
slightly not quite right. What do? You keep the take that looks much better,
Right.
or do you strive for perfection and lose something? In a chess set.
Probably just keep it, and that's something that look, I've seen some interviews with obviously it's a little bit different, but I've seen interviews with Jerry Garcia. For those of you that don't know, or I don't know if I ever told you, Bruce, but I'm a big deadhead, and a lot of it was not perfect, by any means, but it was just look,
Well,
his solos were some of the best, so.
I will say that any mistake that people find are mine because and not anyone else's because I had to sign off on it in the end.
Wow.
So any mistake is mine. Hopefully there aren't too many.
And it takes a special someone like Bruce to like even say something like that. Everyone is using everyone else as scapegoats, but we gotta own up to what we do. So
My own defense.
even
I
though
don't
it's
wanna
probably
do
not
this.
yours, but that's besides the point.
My
So
own defense. I don't want to do this, but I will do this. When you're on set and there are sometimes hundreds of people there,
wow,
and it's great deal of pressure. It's costing money. So every take, every single second on the set is precious.
wow.
And so you want to get it right, of course, but it's easy to do things wrong. For example, sometimes you'll see clocks slightly not right or other things. I think you have to look at it from the overall perspective. I mean, it puts chess in a great light. It's very exciting. And Anya, she captures every nuance of being, a top flight chess player. Her expressions are ingenious,
No,
really.
absolutely. And look, I would you mentioned Max Palmer. It's learn more about chess by osmosis. I'm sure Liz, Anya certainly did, by her character, of Elizabeth Harmon, of course.
Oh, lost your sound again.
Yeah, I'm sure, Elizabeth Harmon's character, certainly, taught her a lot about chess by osmosis. So, anyway, Bruce, I want to thank you so much for this more than inspirational and informative episode. Look, Bruce has been doing so much and wears, of course, many hats. As a teacher, a coach, a film advisor, uh, an author. The list goes on and on and on. But yeah, we had just a great conversation about how I met Bruce, as a kid through Shanaz Kennedy, to some tips about teaching and launching school programs, to his experience with Joshua Waitskin and searching for Bobby Fischer, uh, you know, teaching Fabiano Caruana and other great players to, of course, talking about his work as an author and most recently advising Queen's Gambit. Um, Again, I'm sure we could go on all day, but Bruce, is there anything else you'd like to add about your career or any of your experiences?
probably an infinite number of things, or close. I wish I had done many things differently, but we learn from our errors, our mistakes, and I've really enjoyed what I do. I love teaching, and I hope I can do it for many years more.
I'm into that, and Baruch Hashem that you can, for many many years, Bruce, and I want to do round two several years from now, many years from now. So yeah, Bruce, thank you so much. And if you'd like to share, Bruce, if anyone wants to reach you, have more book ideas or anything, how can people reach you if they want? If
I have
you'd
a
like to share.
website, but you can email me if you want to. I will do look at my emails eventually at Bruce M. Make sure you include the M for Michael. Bruce M. Pandolfini at
What's your
gmail.com.
nickname, Bruce?
My
I
nickname?
mean, I said your nickname, your middle name.
It's
What's the
Michael.
Michael?
Yeah.
Learn something every day.
And a lot of people just call me Pando.
Wow. Well, Bruce, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. And I guess we'll close it off by saying, "Be brilliant."
I love it. Keep up all the great work. Take care, man.
Be brilliant. Thank you all for watching. That was an absolute incredible podcast episode with my dear friend and mentor, who many of you, of course, know, Bruce Pandolfini. Go later today to soundcloud.com/Premier Chess, and you will see the uploaded recording. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and do a raid here. And I gotta actually run real quick, so I'm just gonna raid someone. I don't even really know him that well, but that's okay. And I'm gonna be raiding GM Bonnie. And if you come back to the stream today at 4 p.m., I'll be streaming a lesson. So seize the day. Set it up. Cyberpunk 2077. Explore Night City on the all-new Xbox. This is spoiler alert.